To start, if we turn the camera on, 7 o'clock up there. Are you ready, Brian? Yep. All right, we'll get started. Good evening, everyone. We'll stand. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we get into our meeting tonight, you'll see on top we have a hearing on the proposed resolution to continue the participation in instructional support program. It is 7 o'clock and we'll start that public hearing.
Okay. We talked about the continuation in the instructional support levy. With the instructional support levy, something the district has had since the 90s. I think 331 districts in the state of Iowa have it. It can be up to 10% of your regular program district cost. Ours is only 6% of the regular program district cost. It's general fund dollars. This is where that goes. Equals around $1 million for us, and $800,000 of that comes from income surtax, not property tax, historically, and we would want to continue that way. This would go into place July 1st, 2026. It's always in place for 5 years. And typically, this is the time when you start to look to renew that, as we'll be working the budget for fiscal year 25 coming up here in a few months.
All right, any questions here, public hearing? All right, hearing none and seeing nobody in the audience for it, we'll close the public hearing at 7:02.
Okay.
We'll move into the organizational part of our meeting and turn this over to the board secretary, Lisa.
Any nominations for the president position?
I nominate Rodney.
I will second that.
Thank you.
Amy heard that. Let me write all these down. Let's see. Any other nomination?
I call for nominations to be ceased.
Did you guys want to just do by voice, or do you want the actual ballot? I think voice would be fine.
Voice would be fine, I think.
With one nominee.
There's just
Yeah.
one.
All those in favor of Rodney as president, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Pass. Pass that over to you.
Okay, do you
You
do
do
the
the
oath
oath.
after both, or do you
I
wait
thought we talked about how we were gonna do it.
together?
I can do it. Are you ready?
All right, I'm ready.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of President of the Algona Community School District, as now or hereafter required by law?
I do. All right, we now need to, if we're moving forward, we need to get nominations for vice president for the 24-25 year.
Jay?
I'd like to nominate Tom.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a nomination for Todd, and we,
Todd or
by
Tom?
Jay.
Tom.
Oh, Tom, I heard Todd, so I'm glad you said that. Tom Nugent, okay. And we had a second by Andrea, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any further nominations? Then do we need a nomination for motion to cease?
I move to cease nominations.
Thank you, Andrea. All right, we do have a nomination for Tom Nugent as vice president. We'll do the same with the voice. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Tom Nugent has been elected as our vice president for the upcoming year.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you,
Thank
Tom.
you, Rodney.
We need to administer the oath to Tom. Is that something you do or I do?
I'll do it.
Good. That's
You
fine.
solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of Vice President of the Algona Community School District, as now or hereafter required by law.
I will.
All right, thank you, Tom. All right, as we move into the meeting, please continue to remember our mission and our vision as we make decisions and throughout our agenda tonight. We've already called to order. We do have a quorum. Hearing to delegations, none. Communications to the board, none. And so need a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Thanks, Jay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Lanny. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. Consent items you should have received with your board packet earlier. Lisa does have a few other invoices there for you to review. And if there's any comments or...
Revenues and expenditures look really good. Revenues are about $1 million over expenditures, and we anticipate those will be, at this point, that'll close some, but certainly anticipating a surplus in this year.
Okay. Any other questions as you look through the consent items? Hearing none, we need a motion for approve the consent items.
I do a motion to approve the consent items.
Thanks, Tom. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Todd. We have a motion and a second.
I just have one question.
Yep, go ahead.
Mitchell Wallace repairs, what do we do there? It's for like 16,700.
Is that the one from the first batch or the second? The one you
This
got?
is the first batch.
have to ask
I'd have to
Jeff
check,
on
Jay.
that.
And
Who's it made to? that
It's
you're-
C.H. McGinnis Co.
Oh,
Incorporated.
that's probably boiler?
boilers, I would say, but
I think that's boiler, yeah.
we can check too.
HVAC.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, any other further questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent items approved. We'll move right into the superintendent's report.
Over the past year and a half, and we've talked a few months back on an SRO in the district, a school resource officer, and the value that a school resource officer could have. We've had some great discussions with Chief Bo Miller on what it would look like to bring an SRO to the school district. I think we're always looking to grow the environment and make the environment for our kids the best that it can possibly be. And I think an SRO would add to that. It would help to create a great environment for our kids. There was some legislation last year that was written that would provide some funding and some flexible funding options to fund this type of position that did not pass. I do believe that will be a legislative priority again this year, and we hope that there is some increased flexibility in how to fund it. But we also know that we can fund the position with the use of management funds and not as a general fund expense. There's other districts who do that as well, and I think that's an alternative funding way that we could bring an SRO position to the district. Met with Chief Miller a few weeks ago. We started to just put together some draft roles and responsibilities, and I would like to share those with you at our January meeting, and with the hopes of recommending the approval of a school resource officer for our district for the 2025-2026 school year. Any
Joe?
questions on Andrea?
Yeah, will we see the roles and responsibilities prior to the board meeting?
Yeah, you certainly can. They're almost complete, so I can share those with you guys in the memo this week. And again, those are draft. We took those draft ideas from some other schools who have similar structures, and sitting down and what we would want that to look like, kind of combining those two into something like that. So I will share that with you guys here this week.
Awesome, thank you.
I think that'd be helpful as we make a decision for January. What's that?
If any other questions on that start to emerge, and we'll, we do have a way to fund it through management. Other flexible options, I think, are still important, and met with our legislators last Tuesday at a regional superintendent meeting. I don't think there's any question that that's a priority for them. Some flexible options, such as the use of sales tax dollars, save dollars. Again, not a general fund expense, and also not a property tax expense. So that, I think, is a combination of a fair way to provide that for all school districts. There is legislation that currently exists that schools of certain sizes, larger than us, are required by law to have a school resource officer. So I don't know if that requirement starts to move down with flexible funding options that they would pursue, but I do think it would be something that'd be valuable for our district.
Is this a position that would be hired by the school? We pay the law enforcement downtown? How do we work the?
Yep,
the games?
2080 agreement with Algona, with the city of Algona. So they would contract the officer, probably 75%-ish of that time would be here, and we would pay 75% of that allocated amount. There may be some expenses with that, such as equipment, such as, this officer would have a car, and it's an additional officer, so it's an additional car. If we were paying for that, then that car would need to be ours. Well, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to own a police car, but we might have maybe an annual fee to be put towards the vehicle.
So that's how we can make it work using non-general fund dollars.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
All right.
It would be similar to,
His insurance and everything is through the city,
yes, yep,
We just
insurance,
pay-
hypers,
paying
we're just
our
paying a
nurses.
monthly amount.
similar to our nurses' contract.
Yes, very similar to that. Their time spent during school, when we're in school, they're in school. When we're not in school, they're not in school. They can pick up shifts, they could work weekends. During June, July, and August, they would work for the city of Algona, and chief would schedule them as so. We know there has to be flexibility in the hours. We're not going to be able to say it's an 8 to 4 job, because there's presence at games, there's presence at events, there's presence at dances, all kinds of different things that we view this position in. So it's hard to put just a fixed number. What we do is the same number of hours that an officer for the city of Algona is expected to work in a year. That's how we kind of, and we think that will work out. We have days off that they don't, so those are kind of, I don't know if you want to call them banked hours, but those are hours that they have, and how that all probably balances out. They would, when we look at roles and responsibilities, we'll look closer at this, but they would have a presence in all of our school buildings. We want them in our elementary schools. We want them with all of our kids. They'll probably, their home base would be the middle school, high school, but they would be everywhere. We would still have a DARE officer who's not that officer. We would still have ALICE officers who come in and train us in ALICE. It wouldn't be this officer. This officer would go through the ALICE training with us, because they're part of our staff, and how would they respond as the SRO to an incident that takes place at school. They would be part of some of our professional development training. We talked about our de-escalation CPI training, which includes holds. That's not something they do now, but it would be very good for our SRO to be part of that training. So interested in putting that all together and presenting that to you guys.
That's great, thank you.
I'm going to move into the Iowa School Performance Profile. This is something we review every year. I'm going to touch on what it is and why we have it, and then Mrs. Eischen is going to dig a little bit into the performance profile and kind of what makes it. We have it because of the federal education plan. The federal education plan is ESSA, every Student Should Succeeds Act. It's our accountability system that every state has to have as part of that federal requirement. So our accountability system puts measures in place for schools, and the end result is a performance profile that we're going to talk about today. Some of those measurements have changed from last year to this year, or at least how they're using them in the profile. For example, growth and proficiency, which we talked with you guys a lot on proficiency numbers. Proficiency numbers were weighted fairly small, about a third of like a total ranking is last year. Now they're half. Growth had a much higher weighting to it last year. Now it's the other half. So growth and proficiency are now equal on the profile. That's one difference. Attendance is now part of the profile. It never was previously. Attendance not only in the number of kids who are chronically absent, but also an attendance growth. So if a student was chronically absent, how much did you get them to grow from that year? Which is a difficult measure, but it's certainly important and something we want to improve. Some other changes, there's things that if you don't have any of your groups of students, your whole groups or your subgroups, such as students on free and reduced lunch or English language learners or students on an IEP, if any of those subgroups you don't test 95% of them, then your ranking just goes down to the next one. And we're going to talk about that with the high school, where the high school has an acceptable ranking, but dropped, was moved down because of one of those subgroups. Also, if you're targeted as you have a subgroup that has an area of growth, if you have one of those, that moves you down. So Mrs. Eisen is going to get into all of those things kind of as we go. ESSA requires all states to publish a report card. Our report card is the Iowa School Performance Profile. This is all public information. You can go to the iowaschoolperformanceprofiles.com and see every public school is on there and how they score. And Janie's going to take us through some of those measurements. So I'm going to open that up to her and tell us a little bit more about our profile this year and what makes it up, and what are some of those scores that we have for this year?
Yep, okay, so first slide there, the reason why there was a little bit of a shift in how the profile criteria was set was after this last go-round, we had kind of the old measures for about 4 years. The COVID years in there kind of hard to tell because we didn't test the one spring, and so then all the designations were held, but kind of a few people at the DE got together, and it was really hard to understand what some of those measures were. There was a really long formula that was used to give people points. Things were weighted differently. That kind of got confusing because then it made it seem like something was more important than others, and so they kind of got a group of stakeholders together with some foundational principles that we want something to be consistent, rigorous, reliable, and fair. No matter what your school size is, from a small school to a large school, everywhere in between. They wanted to make sure that whatever we look at can support continuous improvement, because that's really the point of having these profiles is that.
And I'm gonna interject there, because I think lots of people look at these things a different way. We focus on that right there. You know, whether we have scores that are good or we have scores that need to be better, which we have both of, our focus is on what's good for kids. And we have things that have to get better, and we have things that we're doing really well. This profile helps us identify both of those things so that we can grow and that we can get better.
Yep, and those stakeholders wanted to make sure that there was opportunities put in for continuous improvement. So show the highlights along with some of the lowlights sometimes. Want to make sure that we reflect on high expectations for students. Of course we want to have high expectations for all of our students, including those who might enter onto a college pathway and or other careers. The fourth bullet there, be easily understood by families, educators, communities, and taxpayers. It was a little wonky, that first go-around of it. It was kind of hard to understand some of the criteria that were in it. So the hope is that this one will be a little bit easier to understand. And then incentivize evidence-based practices. So, of course, we want to make sure that we're using those practices. So that's why some of those criteria shifted just a little bit, okay? So, Mr. Carter's going to do a little bit of clicking here. So this might look familiar from years past. These are all of the pieces that make up the performance profile. So, Mr. Carter, if you click, these first ones here, those still remain. So percent proficient on our reading and math assessments, those who are making growth on our reading and math assessments, the students making progress towards the ELPA 21, that is an assessment for our English language learners, that has remained the same. Graduation rate, for the most part, that has remained the same. So those were on before, they continue to be on.
Some of the weighting is different on these, but the scores were part of it before, they're part of it now.
Yep. These two the conditions for learning survey and the average scaled score, they're just gone, which I'm glad the average scale scored was gone. It was extremely difficult to explain that to people, so that one's gone. The conditions for learning survey, we can continue to administer as a school if we would like to. It is just not part of this accountability anymore. We can still see that information on the profile. You can see other schools if you want to. It just does not go in towards the accountability part of it. It doesn't get factored into kind of our score.
And if I was going to complain, which I'm not tonight, but if I was going to, no longer asking our kids about their experience at school, I think is a bad thing. You know, why not ask our kids about our experience here? That's what the conditions of learning survey did. We will still do that, and we will continue to use that. So focusing back on what I said before, you know, we always want to do what's best for kids, and we're always going to work to grow, and we're still going to. It's just not part of our scoring.
Yep. Now we're going to kind of get into some dashed lines. So participation, that is still in there. However, it is no longer given a score, and we're going to look at that in a second. So that's why that's kind of dashed. It's there, but shifted a little. Something that was added is proficient on science. So before, we just had a focus on reading and math. They have now added proficiency on science. Of course, we've always think science, social studies, those are all very important, but this is the first time science has been added to it. One big piece is chronic absenteeism and growth. That is a completely new category added to it. And then a couple of our last ones is post-secondary readiness. It went from the dashed lines to, you can click it, Mr. Carter, it still exists, but with different criteria. So if you just take a peek at that and kind of see, that's some of the changes, some of the things that stayed, some shifted a little bit, and then we have some that are sort of brand new. Okay, and I'll go through some of those brand new ones. One piece was scoring. When I said that it was kind of difficult for stakeholders to understand the scoring, it's because the weighting of things got a little bit weird. So this is pretty much just straight up out of 100 points for all of those categories. So those measures across the left side there, this is for the high school one. And actually, Mr. Carter, you can put up the next one that shows the middle school one. The high school has 2 additional measures, but I think it's really important for you to look at those measures on the left side of proficiency, growth, and chronic absenteeism, and then on the high school side, you'll see graduation rate and post-secondary readiness. If you just think about those measures, that is what we are about at school. Are our kids proficient? Are they growing? Are they here? Do they graduate? And are we preparing them for post-secondary? I mean, the measures themselves are very good measures that we should be looking at.
And then preparing them for post-secondary in different ways.
Absolutely. Do
Which,
have multiple paths.
College credit as
Yep.
well as work-based learning.
Yep,
Which
yep.
is
And we'll
important.
dig a little bit more into some of those. So you can see that the totals for the high school, their total possible number is out of 900. And elementary, middle school, their total possible is out of 700. Then it kind of just becomes straight up, here's 100 points, whatever your percentage is, that's what you get. One thing to note about the English language learners that is in undergrowth, the score for a high school is always going to be 900 and always going to be 700. For elementary, middle school, if you do not have enough students in that English language learners one, they just take those 100 points and they distribute those to the ELA and the math. So then those become 150.
So if you don't have enough ELA, these would be both be 150.
Yep, and we have a couple that are like that. I'm just making sure you see that in case you're somebody who likes to look at other schools, because you can go look at any other schools just so you understand what it is that you're looking at. So I kind of highlighted a couple too, that those proficiency, growth, chronic absenteeism, those are the same, and then we add that graduation rate and post-secondary for the high school. Okay, so participation rate, this was one of the ones that it stayed, but it's shifted a little bit. The stuff at the top, that's just the kind of formal definitions that they give. But if you click Mr. Carter, I kind of gave you the nitty-gritty of what was it previously. We were awarded points if we tested 95% of our students, if they took the ISASS assessment. It was kind of an all or nothing. You got, I want to say it was 10 points, but I don't really remember right now, but it was like if you tested 95%, you got the 10 points. If you didn't, you got 0. I mean, there was nothing in between. Now, Mr. Carter mentioned that if we, there's no points factored into it, but if we do not test 95% of any one of our subgroups, we are dropped a category, and we will look at an example of that here in just a moment. So it still matters, it just doesn't factor into the points. So what used to be conditions for learning, that survey we took, that's kind of shifted to a criteria of chronic absenteeism and growth. The question we're really trying to answer here is, are students attending school? So one of the first measures that we see with that is what percent of students were chronically absent. And then that gives kind of the definition of what that is, those 10% of kids. And then we have a second measure that we get points for. I think we get 50 points for that first one and 50 points for the second box on the screen. How has the attendance rate of students who were previously chronically absent changed? I'm going to muddle my way through this, but Mr. Carter, you hop in anytime you want to. We're learning a little bit about this one, but this one it's a little bit harder to get some growth on, because if your number of chronically absent wasn't really low, you don't have a lot of room to grow, and so the points that you get aren't very high.
So if you have a chronic absentee rate of 10%, which is what our elementary has, those kids that are the 10%, what this measures is what they grew from that year to the next.
Mm-hmm.
So we're
just
taking,
that 10% of kids.
Just that
just
10%,
the 10%
of kids. So the better you are in attendance, the harder that is to move. The worse you are in attendance, the easier that is to move, just statistically. But it's also a really hard measurement to change.
Yep.
It's also one we don't have 100% control over. Mm-hmm. So again, if I was going to complain, that's a problem with putting attendance rates in here, is we don't have 100% control over attendance, mm-hmm. especially over a young child. But it's something we are now measured on.
And it's a good point that Mr. Carter brings up, that none of the things that are on the school performance profile are like immediate quick fixes. I can't change anything next week on these, and they're kind of intended to be for continuous improvement, for some system things. They give us some really great things to ask questions about, to get curious about, to wonder about, to take some actions towards. But that's not always reflected immediately or even on the next round of profiles. So we have to be patient with a few of these things and be okay with where we're at, but know that we're making action or taking actions in other places. Next one that had a large change was in the post-secondary readiness. The question remains the same: what pathways do we have for students beyond high school? So previously, I'm gonna show you what's in that previously box there. Previously, there were 4 pieces that were looked at: students who participated in the ACT or SAT, the success that students had on it. There was a criteria or a number of, I think, 30, how many kids scored a 32 or above, something like that. How many of our students are in CTE classes, and then how many of our students were taking advanced coursework. A couple of years ago, when changes happened to needing to take ACTs, and students not necessarily having to take that, we kind of knew there'd probably be a shift in this measure. So now what we have is, if you click the next part of it, now post-secondary readiness includes, it will include 3 measures eventually. It included these first 2 that you're looking at for this release now. Percent of students who are earning college credit while in high school, which we should be really proud of. We have a lot of opportunities for students in high school to do that, so that's great. And then the percent of students participating in work-based learning opportunities while in high school. Without going too far down a rabbit hole, that definition, so you might say, well, what counts as work-based learning? Those criteria were set in May, like a few months ago, May. For a profile, who, if you look in purple up there, the score on this year's performance profile for us was taken from the seniors who did not graduate this last May, but the May before. It will always be a year and a half-ish, because that's when the data comes in. It just has to be what it is. So just to put that into perspective, there's no excuses in any of this, but just to kind of give you a really clear vision, kids who graduated in May of 2023 were scored on criteria that was set in May of 2024.
Yeah.
That's just the simplicity of what it is.
So number one, the percent of students earning college credit, we're really good at that.
Yep.
83% of our kids
Yep.
who graduate from Algona High School leave with college credit. That's awesome, and it's because of the programs that we have in place in our building, in our district, in our walls. The percent of students participating in work-based learning, that's really important. Our score's not good on that. Number one, we don't
Yet.
have enough of it. Number two, some of it is simple coding,
Yep.
in that we didn't have it coded that way because it was something that came in May. So, it will be better right away
Yep.
just because of some
Yep.
of those types of things. But it's also got to get better too. We want to give kids those experiences. They should be out in our community in work-based learning opportunities, and we need to do more of that.
Yep. A really good example of when I said that we take these as opportunities, this work-based learning one has been a really good a way for us to do that. The cool thing is that we were already talking about this
Yeah.
and having conversations about this. The profile got released and we went, oh, well, okay, we really do need to do something with this, not because we have to, but because we know that it's good. Some quick wins can happen here. Like Mr. Carter said, we found out some things just within coding, the types of course names that we were using. We can do some little fixes on that. However, our next profile is going to be off the kids who graduated last May. So again, we'll just have to wait to see on it, and that's okay. We know that we're taking action, and that's okay. So really quick, the comparison of the models. When I was on a webinar, I just think it's important for you guys to know that, we switched from one to another, different kinds of scoring. So do things look better or worse with this new scoring? Sometimes people like to say, oh, we're scoring things different to lower a bar, all that kind of stuff. This is some data that they've done with running some comparisons of both of these models. So this year, there are 35 comprehensive support and improvement schools. Those are the lowest 5%. That number is always going to pretty much be 35. That's just, they take the lowest 5%. So usually that's just what it is. 15 of those 35 also had that designation last year. 20 are newly identified, and then 16 moved out of that. So really, there wasn't much shift in that, and they ran those schools last year's profile on these new criteria, and so it didn't really change all that
you'll
much.
hear some, I don't know if I want to call it rhetoric, you'll hear some stories, and there already has been, that this new scoring changed everything for schools. It really didn't. 20 new, 16 out. It's, a difference of 3 or 4
Yep.
schools.
And
I think it identified things that are important.
Yeah.
And we want them to be better. Like Janie said, if you caught that, this number is always 35
Yep.
because it's lowest 5%. We will always have 35 comprehensive schools in the state of Iowa, unless the number of our districts change.
Correct.
And then that number would change.
Yep. And at the very top of this, when I said one of the things they found was schools who scored high on the previous model continued to score high now. So statistically, it was kind of apples for apples. So the next one of the targeted schools, that would be for schools who have a subgroup kind of below that cut line. This year, there are 377 targeted schools. Now, remember, a school is anything defined as middle school, a high school, an elementary. Those are buildings. Those are structures. Is what that's counted as. So 271 of them were designated that in 2023. There's 106 new ones in 2024, but 180 exited that status. So again, fairly similar. So if you're wondering, did this new scoring drastically alter something for better or worse, I think you can say statistically it was kind of even. In that. So, and then this is also something they shared that I just thought might be of interest to you. This is not our school data. This is something that they showed with it. So if you look all the way over on the right, this shows that number of targeted schools in 2023, and then when we ran it in 2024, and if you click, Mr. Carter, on the first one of English language learners, so 4.9% in 2023, that did go up a little bit in 2024 to 6.1% of schools. I think that you could probably make the jump that we have more English language learners in our state as well. And so I think that some of that might be reflecting from that increased population as well.
So what this is saying is that 4.9% of last year
Yep.
of schools were targeted because of their subgroup, their EL
Yep.
subgroup. This year it's 6, so it went up with that subgroup.
Yep.
However, They went down with our
Yep.
free and reduced
Free and
across the
reduced,
state.
yeah, went from 6.9 to 3.7, kind of a substantial decrease. So that shows that we're kind of making some movement towards that. The next one of students with an IEP, that one had kind of an increase. So from 23.1% to 27.4%. Personally, I'm not totally shocked by that. We know we have some gaps and holes within our IEPs and students with disabilities. And so a great opportunity again for us and to see, does that hold true in our district? Is that something that we also need to look at? One of importance on there also is the Black and African American line that went from 5.5 to 4.2. So a little bit of movement for the positive on that one as well. So.
And Janie will get to this, it does hold true. Our growth with our students with disabilities at the high school is an area of concern that
Yep.
we have to improve on.
Yep. So, I just gave you a bunch of things about what the profile is. Let's quick take a peek at where we're at in our buildings. So the high school, you'll see there that they earned 521.4 points. So that put us in the acceptable range, okay, because high school's all the way over there on the right. But, Mr. Carter, if you click, you're going to see that if you were to look online at our profile, it will say that we are a priority building at the high school because, one more click, we dropped one category because we did not have 95% participation in one of our subgroups. And I've broken that data down. We can look and see what that is. So it's not a surprise. We can look at that. And then we were also lowered one more category, so we kind of went down the ladder because we do have an ESSA designation for our IEP students. That means that our IEP students overall, their profile score was below that cut line that gets set by the lowest 5%. We had this designation a couple of years ago. It's again an opportunity for us to look at some things because those students in the high school, they were also in the middle school. They were also in the elementary. It's a good way to look at some things all the way across the system and think a little bit about that subgroup. So that's an example of how those move down the rungs. Here's the middle schools and Lucia Wallace's. I just put Lucia Wallace, although it really means the elementary. But the middle school, they had 484.81 points, and they were in the commendable range. And Lucia Wallace had 416.57 points. They were in the acceptable range.
See, our middle school is a couple points from high performance.
Yep.
You know, so they scored really, really well.
One thing to note for Lucia Wallace going forward, and for you, if any of you like to look on those profiles, you might want to know if that elementary building has sixth graders, fifth graders, you know, who they have in them. Because at Lucia Wallace, we only have one opportunity for growth. Because the kids take the test the first time in third grade. So there's no growth that gets awarded to that. So the only growth that the elementary ever gets is from third to fourth. It's just not a huge pool to pick from. So on years that you have kind of a higher performing class, that might jump you up. On years that you have a class that might be a little less performing, that kind of bumps you down. So if you're peeking online at ones, you just might want to think about what the makeup of that building is.
And we've seen that a lot.
We have.
Our score
Fluctuates.
Well, you'll say our elementary score, but it's really just Lucia Wallace has varied from high performing to acceptable because we're really just measuring one class.
Yep.
Because of our structure of K4, 5, 8.
Yep. You know, but a building that has up to sixth grade, they've got multiple opportunities for growth. So I just think it's important for you to know that when you're looking at the data sets. And then one last reminder about where a lot of the data for the ISPP comes from. It comes from that ISAFS test, which is only given 3rd through 11th. I then added on there that, you know, we give universal screening assessments. I've stood before you before and showed you some updates from our fall, winter, and spring screening. Those are designed to kind of give you a prediction about how students will do on those standardized tests. And so since we don't have kindergarten, first, and second grade students taking the ISASP yet, you know, sometimes we say, well, we can't really count them, but they're taking a lot of assessments leading up to that. It is not, we know a lot of information about how kids are going to do as they get a little bit older. So it's really, in kind of that last piece that I put on there, it's really looking at opportunities to look at all of our data and to analyze all of them. I carry around this little I got lots of things in here. It's got the screening reports, it's got all of our ISAS things, it's got deep dives and all of that, because you really need to look at all of those pieces and really dig into some things that you might want to take action on. Lastly, my last little piece, what the ISPP does is it takes a whole bunch of data that we have to submit to places, it sorts it, it will kind of arrange it for us. It will give us this pretty little picture, but then the last thing that we have to do is we have to explain it with a story. We have to build something with that. That's what we're starting to do right now. Work-based learning is a big one, looking at some of our things within our IEP, looking at where we had successes and saying, how do we emulate some of those? What are some things that are going, really well that we can build on? That's how we take that pile of Legos and make it into something that we can actually use. So. All right, that's me. Oh, and also, I'm sorry, Ms. Carter wanted me to share this too.
Well, that's another new requirement, that.
You have it in your things, I think.
Annual report is in yours. It's also posted online. It really, everything that Janie just told you is just in numerical form in there. But you can look at those things, and those are things that we typically share with you as
That
well.
report does break it down by some interesting things like gender, and then even within gender within subgroups. Those are interesting to kind of look at too. So it goes in my little binder folder everywhere I go to.
A lot of information there.
Lots of information.
Good
Thank
information.
you.
Try to dig through it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. This does have a lot of good information though in it, so. All right, thank you, Janie. We'll move on then to old business, and we have a second reading of board policies.
Second reading for board policies, there's just two. 5081, which is the class or student group gifts, same directive, new language, and also 5082, open night, no changes to that. The ISP sample policy is brief. Our current policy is a little more detailed and offers our people more guidance, and our public and staff more guidance. So I do recommend the approval of 5081 and 5082.
Got a motion to approve the changes to 5081 and 5082?
Thank you, Todd. Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
Thanks, Tom. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Second policy, or board policy is approved. And new business, we start with the first reading.
Yep, first reading of some of our 600 series. 600 is the goals and objectives of the education program. No changes to policy 600. It currently aligns with the IASB recommendation. 6011, the school calendar. No changes, currently aligns with the IASB recommendation. Our calendar in Algona has been based upon hours, with a minimum of 1,080. A school district has the option to base their calendar on hours or days, 180 days. 6012, the school day, no changes with that, currently aligns with the IASB recommendation. 6021, curriculum development. Some of these we have reviewed recently as there were some legislative changes, but no changes from those that we made with curriculum development, curriculum implementation, or curriculum evaluation. In curriculum evaluation, would recommend changing the wording from shall to is. It's that the superintendent shall oversee curriculum evaluation. It should be the superintendent is the person who is doing it, because there's shall, or there's not another person. That's who is doing it. And 6024, pilot experimental innovative projects, no change. What we have aligns with the recommendation. So that is the first reading of the 600 series.
Please take a chance to look them over, and we'll bring them back next month for approval. Looking at B, a dropout prevention application.
This is something that we approve annually to fund our dropout prevention at risk. The dropout prevention at risk funds a number of staff members, parts of some principals, parts of many of our counselors. We have some at-risk associates. We have the at-risk program at the high school. We have the alternative program. at the high school. Those are all funded through dropout prevention. It's a per pupil amount. It's 0.46 times the district cost per pupil times the certified enrollment, which creates $529,919. Some of that is our match in that. That's the total dollars that goes to the dropout prevention at risk. This would allow us to keep defunding those programs, and without it, we just wouldn't be able to have those things that we talked about. I do recommend the SBRC modified supplemental amount for the dropout prevention application.
We need a motion to approve that.
So moved?
Thanks, Andrea. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Lynn. We have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion? Something we've done each year, so. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Some of our assistant principals funded through this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And dean of students.
Okay.
Parts of those, both of those too.
Okay. Motion approved there, then. Cassuth County Conservation Board appointment.
Another annual appointment from our
Did
board.
you have a question, Todd?
No,
I missed?
you said conservation board. It's
Oh,
conference board,
you
sorry.
did. Thank you for correcting me. Thank you.
Another annual appointment from our board each year. I think there's one annual meeting, some who have served on that. Ron, you have?
Yeah.
Well, there was one annual one, and then
What was
last
last
week
week?
was a special one to hire a new assessor.
Yes, sir.
Are you
Get that
our
once in a
representative
while.
this year, Todd? Okay. And Jay, you've done that before also?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need an appointment.
New assessor.
I saw you
Ah,
on the committee.
okay. Is there anyone who would be willing to be our appointee?
I think Todd did a wonderful job.
Todd did a wonderful job, huh?
I'd do it again.
Will you do it again?
Good.
Okay.
Thanks, Todd.
We need a motion then to have appoint Todd as our Cassuth County Conference Board appointee.
I would make that motion.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Andrea. We have a motion and a second. Let's not discuss it anymore. Let's make sure he gets on it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much, Todd. All right. Approve resolution to continue participation in the structural support program as we started the meeting.
Yep, discussed it last month, started it with the public hearing today. This is a resolution to keep our current level. It's not an additional levy, it's not an additional level for that levy. It's to keep our current level of services to fund the ongoing programs of the district. That's a general statement because it's general fund dollars. That's where it goes. Some background, some history. The district has had the ISL since the 90s. We have it at 6%. You can have it up to 10%. I would recommend 6% again. 331 of the 336 school districts in Iowa has it. For us, it equals about $1 million. 800,000 of those $1 million come from income surtax, not from property tax. I would recommend the approval of the ISL starting July 1st, 2026 and going for 5 years.
And is that something that we're setting it at 6% now, or is that a annual thing that you adjust that percentage?
We put that into our budget, that number,
Okay.
and we put in whatever we approve here tonight. So it would be 6% every year.
Okay, for 5 years, okay. All right, any further questions? If not, I need a motion then to approve the resolution.
Make a motion to approve the resolution for continuation instructional support levy.
Thank you, Todd. Do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
Thanks, Tom. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
I think we have to do,
Roll
A roll call?
for the resolution.
It is a resolution, thank you.
so,
Lisa.
I'll go, Louagie,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Limbaugh,
Yes.
and Davis.
Yes. All right, resolution approved. Move on to another kind of yearly application, I believe,
Yep.
SBRC.
SBRC application, what this does is it allows us to get on-time funding authority and budget adjustments for certified enrollment increases. And this is a year where our certified enrollment has increased, so we get the authority for those dollars. This is really important. You could imagine a larger district, a larger growing metro district, starting the year with 300 kids more than they had the year before. In that situation, they would be about $3 million short because we don't get on-time funding. Our funding for the kids we have this year is next year. So this is an application we get that we get the authority for those dollars for the kids who are actually here this year if it's above what our number was last year. So that's what this is. The first part of this is, correct? We have 3 parts to this,
Well,
Lisa?
we ended up having 2 because we don't qualify.
Yep. The second part would be if you have an open enroll out to receive funding for those students who they weren't in the fall 2023, and they're open enrolled out 2004. We don't have any of those, so we don't need that. And then the third part is English language learners beyond 5 years. Funds for those students with limited English proficiency beyond 5 years for our students. So the 2 amounts for those, for the $279,000, that's for the certified enrollment increase, and then the $7,800 for the ELL.
And they're 2 separate.
They are.
Motions.
So we need a motion to approve the SBRC application for certified enrollment increases, and then a motion to approve the SBRC application for ELL beyond 5 years.
Make the motion for the increase in the SBRC for the growth,
Enrollment. Yep.
enrollment
Okay.
growth.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I recall when these first came out, you promoted, Iowa does a great job promoting equity in school finance. Many states don't promote equity. The finance formula, we had great opportunities for equity among all school districts, large or small, same thing here.
Yeah.
It works really well.
And it is not typical that rural districts in Iowa get the increased enrollment one, to be honest, because it doesn't happen to us very often. But this is a really good example of, $300,000 in our budget's a very big deal.
Spending authority.
Yeah, and we need that authority. We are in a good position this year. If we, in a regular budget year where we thought it's gonna be really tight, well, this authority to overspend $300,000 would be important. We don't think we'll have that situation, but it's nice to have the authority to build on our UAB moving forward.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, we do have a motion and a second, and this is for the increased enrollment for the SBRC application. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved for the increased enrollment. Now we need a motion to approve the ELL proficiency beyond 5 years. Is that correct?
Yep.
I do a motion to approve the SBRC application for ELL instruction.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have a second?
So moved. Second.
Thanks, Tom. Do you have a motion and a second? Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We're gonna look at setting time and date for the regular monthly meeting.
Yeah, both items F and G are things that take place in the organizational meeting. First is the time and date of regular meetings. Right now, our meetings are Mondays at 7 o'clock. We did survey our people on preferred times. 7 o'clock was the preferred time in that survey. I will tell you, I don't think that's all of the data that's out there. We've had, since July 2021, there's been 41 board meetings. Since then, we've had 4 visitors at our 7 o'clock board meetings in the last 41 meetings. We did some review of the 23 regional schools. 20 of those 23 have board meetings at either 5 to 5:30 or 6 to 6:30. One has it at 7. That doesn't include us. One other has it at 7, one at 6:30 a.m., and one, it appears they vary their time. But we just want to make sure we're creating the environment where people can attend. We don't have attendance now. Some of it is, I think, that it's available to them all the time, which is great. So I think we need to think about that when we're setting the time and date for our monthly meeting.
So in that, those that have it at 5:30, 6 o'clock, was there any, do they have more visitors?
I don't have that.
Okay.
Just wanted to get some data of, how many visitors do we have? Well, in the last 41 meetings, hardly any. And then what are other schools doing? 20 of them are at earlier times and 3 of them are not. So just some data to go with it. That's a good question though, Todd.
Laverne used to meet at 5:30 and we had exactly 0 visitors also. And we were now online. So I don't know that time makes a difference. It's
Yeah.
interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we meet at 5, I can give an example for the city council. If there is something that people want to visit and be, they usually make time and are there, as long as they know your time, that you're meeting.
I think
So-
keeping it consistent is important.
Yeah.
I do too.
And
Agreed.
so, if they know and that, they'll make time if they have a reason to be there.
From an activity standpoint, Jay, you've got kids and God, you Lady, are we bumping up against games and that kind of stuff more at 5:30 or 7? Does it matter?
Depends on the activity.
A Monday night would typically probably be a middle school night, I guess. There's not a lot of high school. In the summer, I guess there's some high school stuff on Mondays, occasional in the winter. Middle school would be at 4:15, so probably closer to that.
I like the earlier 5 to 5:30 personally for me. Doesn't-
Well, I guess that's where my comment was before. I think I preferred the 5:30-ish time frame myself, because I think people come,
If they're not gonna go, they're real less likely if they go home after
Yeah.
work.
They're not coming
Catch
They're
up
not
on the way
coming back.
I don't know.
I believe that also, Jay. I'm not sure people are coming back
Yeah.
out for meetings very often.
Well, now that we have it.
and we have it televised.
Yeah, televised and recorded, I think it makes it very accessible for people to listen
Okay.
and not attend.
Do you ever get any data on how many watch this?
You could look. I am
Brian
usually
has that.
surprised. On the YouTube thing, it'll say how many viewed. I'm always surprised at the number of views. I think our staff typically watch the board meetings, at some point, which is good.
A few people will call if they watch something recorded.
Yeah.
I prefer the 5:30 too, but again, the 7 o'clock works, but. for you
5:30
coming-
works for me. I feel bad for you driving.
Well, it would be better for Lisa. We can't. I mean, that would help her too. And Lanny, I don't know if you go home and come back. If you were able to be here at 5:30 and not have to go home and back, but maybe you do that either way.
I work in Wesley.
Yeah.
This is a hop, skip, and a jump. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Skipping the job.
Todd, Tom, your guys' thoughts?
My schedule's pretty wide open.
You're flexible? You have a preference, Todd?
I'm okay.
So if we make the motion to change to, or go to 5:30, does that start January?
I would say it would, yeah.
Is that what, I'm just asking?
Yeah, this
That's
is our
when it-
organizational.
Is that in
Organizational
our
meeting.
board
Okay.
policies?
That-
It just says that we set it doesn't say.
It's not in board policy, set time?
Well, I don't know that, I
don't
guess.
think it says that.
I think it just that we set it in the organizational meeting.
We would just have to update it.
Yeah, just update the
Yeah.
policy.
if it is.
I make a motion to set our organizational meetings at Mondays at 5:30.
Okay.
Second Mondays at 5:30, yep. Yeah,
that-
second Mondays at 5:30.
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion from Andrew. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Lanny. We have a motion and second to set our regular monthly organizational meetings, second Monday at 5:30. Any further discussion?
Maybe a policy update.
Yep, we'll do any policy update, and this will begin then at our January
Meeting.
meeting,
It-
January 9th, 2025.
I have to look.
Okay.
Will you remind
It
us
is
of
on
that,
the-
Lisa?
Yeah, you'll,
We will.
please
We'll
remind
show
us,
up at
yeah.
7.
And we'll probably send out, a message and a media post out of that too, because it is changing, so I
Yeah.
think we need to do that. It's not 9.
Well, media's here, they might help us send that out.
Yeah, 12 or 13.
It is on the website too, I see
Yeah.
it's 7 o'clock, so that'll be changed.
Yeah, we'll have to change that also.
All right, we do have a motion and a second. All in favor then, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. All right, we also need to look to appoint legal counsel.
Yeah, we've done it before in the summer, but it should be done at the organizational meeting. Steve Avery has been our legal counsel, has been for many years. Work closely with Steve on lots of different things, and I would recommend we appoint Mr. Avery for the same position again this year.
Need a motion then to approve Steve Avery as our legal counsel.
So moved.
Thank you, Lanny. Do we have a second?
Second that motion.
Thanks, Tom. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved, to approve Steve Egbert. Looking at a few minor fieldhouse project changes.
Yeah, I know, Todd, you asked the question, I think 2 months ago when we had the last one. It's a good one. Do I foresee, and I didn't, these weren't necessarily ones that I did see coming, although they are, they're appropriate. And I will mention one that I do see coming here down the road. But the first is for electrical room changing. There were some changes that had to be made into relation to where electrical boxes were. And with that change, the amount of conduit, so that's a change order for $1,828. The court line markings, you know, the specs were just for, you know, it had a basketball court and a volleyball court. There's some additional markings, including some pickleball courts on our two Southwood courts, and then as well as a third basket arc on each court. So those additional markings of $3,600. The backflow preventer and pot feeder, that's one I should have seen, because there's some HVAC upgrade that had to happen in our existing high school, and we knew that, and it wasn't in the specs, because we knew we could just handle that with our funds. So this is an increase of a backflow preventer and pot feeder, which is part of that HVAC upgrade. So new parts for that for $2,100. And then additional blocking for the sign on the south wall. There's two pieces of signage. On the north, which will face McGregor, we're going to put up the Bulldogs. That is just like what's on our black wall of the field house, because if you'll remember back 4 or 5 years ago when we put that up, they put the wrong ones up first, and we were able to keep the wrong ones, and we're going to put those up on the north wall. On the south wall, there's going to be a large A, and this is backing for that lighted A. Now, we have not approved the cost of this additional signage yet. That will be coming. That's one coming next month. But this is for just the backing that they would mount it to, because if you've been out there at all, updates, roof is done. They're putting siding up right now. Hope to have it enclosed by January 1st, and this is part of the process of putting the signage, or the siding up.
And these signage, that's exterior?
Yes,
Okay.
this is all exterior, yes. These are changes our budget can handle. Lisa and I, we work on the budget frequently. We have it on her big board right there. These are all things that we have built in, and we're in good shape to handle those. Some future change orders involving signage are coming next month for sure. And I'm not sure change order is the right word with the signage, because it wasn't in the specs. It's just approval for signage is coming next month.
Make the motion to approve change orders.
Thanks, Jay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Lenny. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Looks like the amounts are right around 10,000.
Yes,
Total.
yes,
So,
9,800.
okay. Yep. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Change orders approved.
Still on, now, originally, wasn't like the wrestling room and weight room supposed to be kind of
Yep.
completed
Yep.
by January 1st-ish
Yep,
year? or-
yep, for sure. They told us that from the beginning, that is not happening. They did give us the date, we had a meeting last Wednesday of March 17th for those rooms. And that's a pretty big deal to give us a hard date, because we are having things delivered then. That's what that means. So we're having a semi full of weight equipment and a semi full of wrestling mats that they got one place to go in the district, and that's in those two
And
rooms.
it's not the middle of the month, it's March 17th.
March 17th. We're actually gonna have the delivery, I think, on the 25th.
That sounds like a better plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but March 17th is the date that we were given, but we're doing the 25th. And that's a lot of stuff, 80 by 80 of wrestling mats will fill a room, our big gym here. We don't have anywhere to store those, so they have to go in that new room. That weight equipment, obviously, that's a lot of equipment. It's gotta go in the new room.
And is the expense for those things part of this budget, or
It is
that
not part
additional?
of the money that we borrowed, it's part of additional sales dollars that we had. So we had it built in the big picture, but not what was bid.
Gotcha, okay.
Very good questions and updates, so. All right, we don't have any open enrollments currently,
We
right?
don't, no.
Okay, so we'll move on then to resignations.
We have one resignation, Kylie Barnett, teacher associate at Lucia Wallace.
Need a motion to approve resignation.
So moved.
Thanks, second. We have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resignation's approved. Moving on to new contracts.
Two new contracts, Moni Westling for speech and Lisa Miller, teacher associate at Lucia Wallace.
Good to fill that Lucia Wallace right away.
Yes, yes.
Are we associates pretty good, or?
Pretty close. I think we envision a few needs emerging, and they're kind of working on those right now.
Good.
All
Make
right.
a motion to approve the contracts.
Thanks, Todd.
Second?
Thanks, Andrea. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? New contracts approved. All right, remember, before we adjourn, next meeting will be a little bit earlier, 5:30, as we approved tonight. Want to thank Janie for being here tonight. I know she had a long day with teachers today, I'm sure with in-services.
It was a long day.
So appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Skylar on the camera, appreciate his time tonight, and hope everybody has a great holiday season. We'll see you after the holidays. Now we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you both.
Who are the bags?
Grace.
Grace Church. Yep.
Kind of our annual Christmas.
Yeah, that's right.
Policy 210.2.
Say it.
From them. We thank them very much.
Website is clicked.